Talk to yourselves.
Okay, so let me tell you what, one of two things is going to happen here. We either are going to continue, or we're going to run and continue. If there's disruption, we will stop the meeting.
Well, there's only one. Give him the same kind of warnings that you gave.
I got the rules, thanks. So what we will do, the Board of Police Commissioners has completed the adjudication. We will announce and listen carefully because there are unanimous, non-unanimous, there are all kinds of different things that will be announced. So try and listen carefully so at least you can understand what we did before you react to what we did. It's up to you. In addition to that, we will talk about the process. We will be, Mr. T-Bank will also talk about, we will be releasing...
Mr. President, may I bring the meeting back into...
Yeah, go ahead.
The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session.
Okay, Mr. T-Bank will also talk about when we will be releasing more documentation, which possibly will be today. And also the next steps for a case like this, because we have one role, like we've explained to the family and explained before. After that, we will go back and complete the meeting, if we're able to, and that meeting has another agenda item, it has a chief's report, and has a public comment. So, Mr. T-Bank, the results of the adjudication and the process.
Yes, Mr. President, the Commission has adjudicated item 5A1, and as it relates to tactics, the Commission unanimously, 5-0, found the tactics of two Sergeant 1s and 1 Police Officer 2 to require a tactical debrief. As to drawing and exhibiting of a firearm, as to 2 Sergeant 1s and 1 Police Officer 2, that was in policy, unanimous 5-0. As to use of force, 1 Sergeant 1, rounds 1 through 4, in policy, unanimous. As to round 5, out of policy, unanimous. As to 1 Police Officer 2, rounds 1 through 8, in policy, 3-2. Round 9, out of policy, unanimous. What will occur now is for those findings of out of policy, under the Los Angeles Municipal Code, the Chief of Police is responsible for administering discipline. Those will go to the Chief of Police with those recommendations, or findings from the Board of Police Commissioners, and the Chief of Police will be responsible for administering any discipline as relates to those findings of the Board of Police Commissioners. The report of the Chief of Police, redacted report today, should be available hopefully by the end of business. We do not have it in our possession yet. Once we have it, it's a public document and will be available for release. That is the redacted report of the recommendations of the Chief of Police.
Can we just ask you to repeat the out-of-policy findings? Which ones were out of policy?
Sure.
I'll be happy to do that now. For 1 Sergeant 1, and this is out of policy only, round 5, out of policy, 5-0, unanimous. As to 1 Police Officer 2, round 9, out of policy, 5-0, unanimous.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Can we get a tally?
Yeah, that comes out. Unanimous, no. They were unanimous votes. One of the votes was 3-2, and that comes out with the report. Okay, so we're going to go back into the regular meeting, the continuation of the regular meeting. Item number 2B is the department's report relative to the fourth quarter report on homelessness.
Say his name! Say his name! Say his name! Say his name! Say his name!
Now it's up to you. Fire.
Thank you. Thank you.
You want charges? What's my LAPD?
Thank you. You want us to know who has the in-policy on any.
You're going to get, like I said, that information's going to come out. Thank you for your opinion. Thank you, sir.
On you now. The hands is on you, but you gotta fire it out.
Thank you. Okay, let's, on the,
Hey, so bro, you want a shirt?
on the department's
Shirt.
report, we're going forward for the homelessness. Do we have Commissioner, questions, comments? Do you want to hear the report?
To believe in God, that don't put human beings up there. And if they don't, right?
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Thank you.
I apologize, my partners can't be here today. They were here earlier. Scheduling conflicts, but what I'll do is just go over 3 top-level overview of the numbers and some initiatives, and then whatever questions you have.
Okay.
So, looking specifically at crime data in
Wow, there's none of us here, huh?
2018 related to homelessness, our identified suspects
Real.
homeless, there was an increase of 53% or 1,683 suspects. With our homeless victims, there was also an increase of 68% or 1,203 more victims. Some of the reasons we believe, although anecdotal, that may cause these increases, increased awareness of homeless-related crimes, more reporting. Also, I believe we have better tracking and awareness internally, where we're coding these things better in 2018 than verse 17. And then just the fact that there's more crime in these populations. Felony arrests, there was an increase of 3% or roughly 55 open charge and felony warrant arrests. Misdemeanor arrests, there was a significant decrease in misdemeanor arrests of 18% or 285 less open charge and misdemeanor warrant arrests. The most significant decreases in these misdemeanor arrests were in narcotics open charge arrests. We had a 59% decrease in stage of pure warrant arrests, 147 less. Fourth quarter versus fourth quarter. Our release from custody citations, we also had a significant decrease of 15% or 221 less release from custody citations issued. And the primary citations that we had saw reductions in were sleeping or blocking the sidewalk, with 225 less citations. And then also drinking in public, we had 117 less RC citations issued during this time period, fourth quarter versus fourth. Personal service citations, we saw a small decrease of about 3% or 7 less personal service citations. And that was our enforcement data. Looking at our mental evaluation unit, we always talk about our homeless-related SMART calls or SMART responses. And if you look fourth quarter versus fourth quarter, the percentage of SMART or homeless crisis calls to overall crisis calls remain the same, roughly 10 to 11% from period to period. We did see a significant decrease in the number of SMART homeless calls for service, and that was interesting because the overall calls increased. So looking into it a little deeper, what we found out in 2017, there's a pre-booking screening form that officers, when they ask the person if they suffer from mental illness or have a mental illness concern, if they mark yes, they would call MEU. MEU is capturing that data as a call for service, but we know this person is going into custody and MEU would not be responding to the jail. So beginning January 2018, they actually stopped capturing those calls, and so we believe that is the cause of this decrease, because everywhere else increased, the numbers increased. We haven't been able to filter out those calls in 17 to compare apples to apples, but I think the explanation shows that 355 calls or 23% less calls for service, that's the primary factor driving that decrease. Looking at use of force related to homelessness, 34% of all of our uses of force were with persons experiencing homelessness, which is up from 28% in the prior period. Specific to, so we had a total in fourth quarter 2018, we had a total of 519 uses of force. 505 of those were non-cats, 14 of those were categorical use of force. Of the categoricals, 4 of them were homeless related. There's 2 ISs, 1 Leary and 1 in custody death. The reason for this increase, we can't give a definitive reason for the increase. I mean, there could be a variety of factors driving the increase, and this is not. I don't want to try and categorize, but you have mental illness, you have narcotics abuse, you also have the number of contacts that you have with homeless individuals. I can't tell you for sure what the increase is in that. So there's a number of factors driving this. I don't have that data. I will look more into it, and hopefully I can provide more at a later date. And then with our HOPE officers or our reset officer, our dedicated homeless effort, over the same time period, HOPE had 2 use of forces, reset had 2 uses of force, and Transit Services Division, HOPE, had 0 use of force. I attribute that to a couple things. I mean, the rate of use of forces with the number of contacts is very low compared to the general use of forces, and I think the type of contacts they have is one thing. They're not driven primarily by Code 3 crisis calls all the time, trying to respond when they're responding. Also, we have a very high percentage of these officers that are MHIT trained. So if you look at our HOPE officers, it's a requirement for you to work reset or HOPE that you have mental health intervention training with either prior to coming in the unit, or if you don't have it and you're in the unit, you have 6 months to get it. So our HOPE officers, out of 42 HOPE officers, 39 of them as of the end of the year had MHIT training. And the others, the 3 that didn't have them, were new officers that are scheduled for training. Same thing with reset. We have 52 officers in reset and Skid Row. 47 out of the 52 have MHIT training. So there's a very high percentage of these individuals that have gone through this. Overall, so year ending 2018, there was a total of 2,415 officers that went citywide, that went through MHIT training. As of this morning, the number was 2,544. So we have 2 classes a month, or deployment period, going through MHIT training. 1 class is for in-service for the probationary officers, and one is for officers that have already passed probation. We'll continue to do that until we get all our first responders trained. Looking at our dedicated homeless officers' efforts, what they're doing out there. So overall, between our 3 units, between Reset, HOPE, and Transit Services Division, HOPE teams, we had approximately 5,000 contacts in the 4th quarter. The outreach contacts for all of them were approximately, were 1,151, which makes about 23% of all their contacts where somebody actually accepted a referral, some type of referral, either a housing referral or a service referral, or we were able to help them in some way. 10% of the contacts resulted in actual enforcement action. The other ones could have been conversations, warnings, what have you. I won't go over the specific loss or sanitation data. This is data that was provided by them. Sanitation's data contains the material that they collect out of the streets, whether it's bulky items and other things, or trash, just continues to increase every quarter. You see the numbers increasing. Sanitation was here. I don't know, Steve. Okay, Steve, do you want to sit up here? Yeah. So we have Steve Pedersen from Sanitation. You can speak on that.
Thanks for coming, Steve.
Guido O'Neill from the City Attorney's Office, who does homeless policy. Thank you. Thank you for staying.
Give it one minute. Do you want to just talk about sanitation?
Sure. Steve Pedersen, I'm Chief Environmental Compliance Inspector for Watershed Protection Division, Bureau of Sanitation. And so, numbers we have for 4th quarter are we processed under CSLA, Clean Streets LA, 492 tents, under HOPE 2,283 tents, and under OHS 291. To storage we sent 50 bags under CSLA, 155 bags under HOPE, and 80 bags under OHS. For the amount of trash collected, We collected 347 tons under CSLA, 476 tons under HOPE, and 94 tons under OHS. And I'm going to skip a couple of the lines here. They're not as consequential, but we collected about 1,969 needles under OHS, 2,167 under HOPE, and 2,534 needles under CSLA. Number of piles of containing rodents and harborage and cockroaches, 239 under OHS, HOPE had 188 and 127 under CSLA. So those are our numbers.
I was just going to go over some of our initiatives or our partnerships and what we've been doing to advance those, unless you have questions about the data. So right now, what we cover is just the data.
My questions cover both, so.
Okay. Just a quick overview then on some of the partnerships and initiatives. One of the things that we've been working on trying to do is better our partnerships with sanitation, with LASA, with DNH, so we have a better working environment and we can get things done more efficiently. One thing we've done with LASA in the fourth quarter, they hired about 100 new outreach workers, and our folks on the LAPD side did a presentation and training to all of them to explain what our role is in this homeless effort, kind of so we can humanize it, and so they have an understanding of what to expect when they see our folks out there at these cleanups with them and with sanitation. We've continued our training with sanitation on 5611 and different other types of cleanups. We recently just did one of those wrecking parks on their new protocols. So we continue to train together so we can work better together and more effectively, and familiar faces get things done, I think, quicker. The DMH component, Transit Services Division, HOPE team had a clinician assigned to them starting September of 2018, and went out with them a couple days a week, and they found it to be very effective. They were able to do, when they encountered somebody with mental illness, they were able to do a quick assessment and make a determination on whether this person needed to be referred to services, be placed on hold, and it was very beneficial to them. In December, they lost that clinician. It had to do with DMH and funding and the number of clinicians available to them. Since then, they've had discussions, and I believe, I don't want to confirm, but I believe they are going to hire somebody for this HOPE team full-time. And I'll report more back on the first quarter report. And so these are the things we're doing to increase and enhance our partnerships. Another aspect that we wanted to do to enhance our partnerships is meet with the nonprofits, all the service providers, and just kind of explain what we're doing. So we're meeting quarterly with a group called the Provider Alliance. Now, this is a group of service providers to the city and the county. There's over 50 of them, so approximately 52, I believe. Chief Moore and the mayor met with them last year with the commitment that we will continue to meet and kind of explain what we're doing, how we're doing things, and collaborate on things, because we really have shifted from an enforcement approach to an outreach approach. And I want them to see that, and we want to build those partnerships. We met again with them in January, had open discussion. The mayor's office was there with us. I think as we progress, we're going to continue to invite our other city partners into this meeting, and hopefully the city and county folks can really start building longer partnerships, stronger partnerships. So that's one thing. Another thing we're doing, warrant and citation dismissal program for low-level nonviolent offenders. So we've been working with the city attorney's office and the courts to first come up with a list of infractions that have turned into warrants or misdemeanor warrants, and trying to get aged warrants or aged violations either dismissed or warrants recalled. We are very close. We can't talk about all the specifics, but I think the timeline will be sometime next week. We can have some very firm information if you want follow-up on that we can make public. But there's significant progress. I just want you guys to know. Let's see. Public advocacy for safe parking, bridge homes. Essentially, what's going on internally is Josh Rubenstein, our public information director, and myself, we're meeting with every slow unit in the city, so all 21 slow groups, 22 including security services. And we are talking to them about what a bridge home is, what safe parking is, the myths versus the facts, answering their questions, because they get very challenging questions from community members that they're not really even quite sure how to answer. So we're trying to give them some guidance, some tools on how to respond to these, and really dispel the myths that they're hearing about these locations are going to attract crime and all these things, because we haven't seen it happen. We are done with all of Central Bureau, half of South Bureau, some of West Bureau. We're hoping by mid-year we can be done with all the senior officers in every division. And then the last thing I have on here is our naloxone, our Narcan program. So we deployed approximately by year-end 4,800 and some odd, give or take, Narcan units citywide to all our patrol officers. We expanded into Metropolitan Division. We have recently acquired a new batch of Narcan, another 5,000 units in Transit Services Division or Traffic Divisions, gaming, narcotics, anyone who may come across somebody that has an overdose, fentanyl, any of that stuff. So we're going citywide with that. We've had, as of this date, December 31st, I believe we had 8. Currently we have 9 uses or deployments of Narcan, and I'd like to say that we had 9 saves or saved 9 lives. So we hope to see that.
It's so few in relation to what goes on in the Midwest. I mean, every time somebody goes out on a call, they have 8 or 9.
Yeah.
True, but also too, this is not including the fire department's numbers, who use it a lot.
Okay.
So these are just the instances where we get there first, we recognize the symptoms, and we deploy it. So we have. I mean, I'm happy to see we have this robust effort to have it out there. So hoping to see it continue. This has all been acquired through a state-funded grant that expires in 2 years. So in 2 years, we need, well, probably next year, we need to figure out a funding source for this to keep it going.
Okay.
That's really all I have.
And the city attorney?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that our office, too, has been trying to really do services-led as much as we can in our office. We have a great project I've talked in here before about, which is LA Door, which is federally funded, that has an outreach group that goes out to Prop 47 encampments and tries to get them into services. It's probably the first time our office has ever done something so formal with outreach. Because LAPD's arrests are down with homeless individuals, and our filings are down as well with homeless individuals, but we always try and offer services in court as well. The services that we are finding, though, are really, it's sometimes difficult to get them into court. So we try and work with LASA, we try and work with service providers to have them in court too, so someone else has the opportunity when in custody or coming to court to have another chance to get services as well. And we're working on other additional diversion programs too, but it's just we need to partner them with really robust services, or they're not a good use of anyone's time.
Okay, Commissioner Bonner. Listen, I have to leave at 1:45 today, so we're going to, I'll break the quorum, which I don't want to do, so I want to try and move through as much of this in the chief's report and public comments as possible.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So my questions, I guess, be a combination of questions and comments and observations. I'll go first to page 17, and you referenced the training that you did with the Housing Services Authority, and you indicate that training provided newly hired LASA outreach employees with information pertaining to law enforcement's roles and responsibilities with homelessness. Can you just tell me what you tell them? I mean, I'm still struggling to, there's a mountain of data, a lot of information, but it's still a little bit of a challenge to understand really what you fundamentally see as the department's role and responsibilities here.
Yeah, so again, I'll try to keep it brief but thorough. Traditionally, our role has been enforcement. And traditionally, the relationship between LASA and LAPD has been taxing. Some of these service providers don't believe there's a role for law enforcement in the homeless effort. So what we do, one thing that we explain is we've come from an enforcement posture to an outreach-led posture, but there's also an accountability piece that has to come from us. So we explain that to them. But also in the CSLA and OHS cleanups and in the whole compliance efforts, our role is really force protection, meaning we are there so they can do their jobs safely. And if threatened or there's a safety issue, that is when we will step in. And if we are conversing with other people outside of that, we are actually doing education and outreach, not enforcement at these times.
So one of my questions on that issue is there In all of the mountain of data here, is there any significant data relative to crime against city workers or others enforced in, or others involved in service delivery?
Separately, no. If a battery against a worker was in there, it would be in the crime data, but separated out, I don't have that separated out.
Are you aware, I mean, just off, are you aware, are there incidents that you're aware of generally, or?
There has been incidents in the past where someone have attacked our workers.
Okay, and then also, just in the interest of time, similarly on page 11, there's a discussion of the use of force, incidences of use of force. Is there information about the underlying circumstances that led to the use of force? Are they just enforcing against property crimes, or are they?
So I don't have that data broken out.
And and that's fine. One of the general points, and again in the interest of time that I'm making, is that this report to me is, it's interesting, and there's a lot of data. It's difficult from a management standpoint to understand what we're to do with it, largely because I'm not aware of any particular goal that we've set, or direction that we've given to achieve, X, Y, or Z. So it's helpful to have the information about the level of activity and the data, but from a management standpoint, it's a little bit challenging to understand, other than being aware of what you're doing. It's difficult to understand what it is as the board that we might do with it. So that's not to suggest there isn't anything, it's just to suggest that working with you going forward, I'm going to want to clarify so that we can have a good discussion about where the trend line should be going, or the causes of certain trend lines that you're reporting in the reports.
Chief, let me make one 30-second observation, and then you can wrap it up for us. But I see us as a team member in something like this, where many times I see us as maybe a team member with the community or a team member with one other group. I see a team here that is multi. I mean, not only all of you, but service providers, nonprofits, because when you look at the statistics of how crime in Los Angeles is dropping, every single statistic, and then you see anything in the crime, homeless on homeless, homeless arrests going way up. It's our fentanyl crisis here. I mean, it's just horrible. But I echo Dale's thought. You get to the point where you say it's overwhelming, but we can't do that. We all have to bring it back to what can we do about it. And I think that not only involves LAPD and fire department and all of you, but every citizen in Los Angeles.
So, Commissioners, and I will just continue in this. This is a report that the Commission has asked for. And in its design, it's been in response to iterations of quarterly updates. This initially began with efforts of data, and then it's transitioned and grown into our efforts moving forward as a city family and as a region dealing with this humanitarian crisis of our generation. And the shared responsibility. I'm thankful that our city partners are here today. When these first reports were coming out, it was the department staff, and yet questions arose of the city attorney's office with alternatives to prosecutions, with sanitation and public works, and engagement for Operation Clean Sweep, and what the challenges were. The matters you see in the first part relative to crime is both victims of crimes who are people experiencing homelessness, what is the nature of that, and then also persons experiencing homelessness who we identify as being involved in crime, and what are the types of crimes, and what is the time over time change in that. What we can't tell is over the last 3 years, homelessness, which in 2015 I believe was the year in which we established a definition of what is a person experiencing homelessness, what is that definition. Once that was done, then we started looking at all the instances of crime being reported and who was involved in it, to then try to discern which are instances in which a person living on a lean-to, or an unsheltered environment, or living in a vehicle, are those instances where they're victims of a crime or they're a suspect of a crime. And the first portion of this report has been trying to lay that out. Secondly, is we've also looked to our enforcement efforts of identifying and holding accountable, to Commander Troy's point, those who are engaged in criminal activity, particularly serious criminal activity like crimes of violence and preying upon neighborhoods, burglaries and those thefts, those types of reports. And what do those numbers look like in relationship to reported instances of crime? Then the other aspect was, what is our quality of life, or what people would say, public disorder crime, sleeping on the sidewalk, blocking pathways, low-level matters that historically people look to the police department, well, you should be making arrests for these offenses, rather than outreach and engagement and trying to get supportive services. And the direction or guidance by the Commission was an interest in demonstrating compassion and not a quote-unquote zero or absolute intolerance of any type of violation. How do we promote people to find shelters, and how do we get them resources that they need, and at the same time protect neighborhoods that have the right to have access to those public walkways, have the equal protections of being able to access those areas and not having them blocked in long-term encampments or these domains that are just all-encompassing of a public sidewalk. So this report is that reflection. I think that today what I take particular note of is that the efforts of problem solving in the latter portions of the report are becoming more important than the crimes that are being reported. Because I think the reality is that whether or not we're seeing an increase in violence by people experiencing homelessness, both as victims and suspects, is harder to tell. I think it's probably better accounting systems when we look at the overall process of crime. But what I'm particularly drawing attention to is the effort of identifying 5, 10, 15-year legal actions that are just sitting in the system and arguably could be keeping a person from getting resources or getting an avenue out of the challenge of experiencing homelessness. I'm encouraged by, and Dominic didn't bring this up, but the Unified Homeless Resource Center that established one of the department's leadership with Fire Department, Public Works, LASA, is our efforts to expand it this year to 5 days a week, and really in reality, like homelessness, it should be 7 days a week. This is a report that drives those type of initiatives. Lastly, for the sake of time, and this was not mentioned also, the department takes a leadership role from the sense of not from an enforcement posture, but from a major public agency, to also take on the task now, presently, where are these tent encampments coming from? We are seeing a phenomenon where tents are being provided to people experiencing homelessness that are very large. They're 15, 20-person tents. And in whether well-intended or otherwise, they're creating circumstances in our public right-of-ways where of significant public danger. Activities that are occurring inside those tents, actions that are concealed by people's actions inside those tents, and then also, frankly, just the lack of public services or sanitation services, and so the harboring of serious health conditions that can be manifested through these tents. That's an effort that while the department doesn't have the role of, one could say we should be enforcing that, we also want to bring to this collective group, working with community-based organizations and others that are providing that resource, well-intended, to encourage them to find an alternative. Because what they're resorting to is actually worsening a situation rather than making it better. And as we enter the summer months, I think we're going to see continued concerns relative to public health in our public places with the lack of sanitation services compounded by these utilities that are being provided by these agencies. So this report is meant to, every quarter, watch, rinse, repeat, demonstrate that, and if you see areas here that are no longer relevant, the department welcomes the opportunity to pull back and adjust. So there are other areas that you'd like to explore further. The use of force relative to people experiencing homelessness. As a reminder, the department will be producing its annual use of force report. I look to that report coming to my office by the end of March, and it's my hope that it will be here in the Commission by April.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I would say that much